Hey guys, Coach Goodrich here. Picking up with this 6th grade Heritage Studies Ancient Civ Cultural Geography video series. This is going to be Unit 4, which is going to start off with the Persian Empire, kind of the end of the Persian Empire. So this is going to be Persia Part 2. We will have 2 more videos about the Greek Empire to close this out shortly after this. So we're going to pick up with a time period known as the let me make sure that I'm going to say this right. Boom. All right. So pick this up with a series of wars and battles between the Persians and the Greeks. I figure that's a good time to get all this in right now. Also has to do with some of our famous kings that we're going to continue to talk about. So first one is the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. 20,000 Persians versus 10,000 Athenians. Conflict starts off in 499 BC with the Greek city-states Athens, Sparta, Ithaca, Knossos, some of the more prominent ones in Asia Minor, rebelling against their Persian overlords, trying to gain their independence again. In 490, Darius the Great would lead his army to Marathon, close to Athens, in an attempt to put out this rebellion once and for all. The Athenians helped to trick the Persians into attacking the middle of their army, and then the sides of their army surround the Persians in a movement that's called a pincer or double envelopment, and then destroyed them. Darius would retreat and escape with his life, but would die before making it back. And that's important because that leads into the next one, the next major battle. It is remembered because a Greek soldier named Phidippides is going to run the 26 miles from Marathon to Athens to help proclaim victory. He runs into the city, calls out Nike, 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 which is the Greek winged goddess of victory, means victory, and he is going to end up passing away shortly after that. But that's where we get marathons from as well. Marathon is 26.2 miles. Example of a double envelopment movement or pincer movement. Oh, you know what? I should probably bring this up a little bit, make it a little easier to see, shouldn't I? There we go. Better look at everything. Well, that's where company Nike gets its name from, and where we get marathons. The next battle, 10 years later, is the Battle of Thermopylae, again in Greece. This is in 480 BC, so you have 7,000 Greeks, of which 300 are Spartans, led by the general and king Leonidas, versus 100,000 Persians, led by Darius' son Xerxes. After Darius' death, his son Xerxes takes his throne and plots revenge against the Greeks. After building bridges across the Hellespont, which is a narrow waterway toward the north, which you'll see in page 185 of your textbook, his army invaded Greece from the north and began to conquer cities on their way down. Sparta, another famous Greek city-state, agreed to meet the Persian army at Thermopylae in a place called the Hot Gates, in between the ocean and a mountain pass, which is only about 50 feet across, which forced the Persians to limit how many soldiers could fight at one time, thus limiting their numbers. After lasting for several days and killing thousands of Persians and buying the rest of Greece valuable time to raise soldiers for another army, the Spartans were eventually betrayed and slaughtered, but Leonidas and his men are still remembered for their bravery in the face of certain death. And because of their sacrifice, that the Greeks are able to do what they did in the next battle. Once again, from the movie 300, a very Hollywoodized version of Leonidas and Xerxes. Statue of Leonidas found at the Thermopylae today. Example of what the battle might have looked like. Where Thermopylae is located. Ceremonial plaque to remember the brave sacrifice. The Battle of Salamis, fought later that year, 480 BC. The Athenian general named Themistocles wanted to finally finish the Persian War for good, while Xerxes had a much larger fleet and much larger ships. Themistocles had smaller, faster ships and better overall sailors. Themistocles, instead of fighting in the open ocean, lured the Persians into a narrow strait between Greece and the island of Salamis, where large ships could not maneuver very well, and this resulted in a huge victory for the Greeks, one of the last major battles of the war, which would help to lead to the land battle of Planae, which would be fought also later that year, which resulted in the final victory for the Greeks in this conflict. There's Themistocles. The empire declined. The last powerful Achaemenid ruler was Artaxerxes I, who is the son of Xerxes. Arta means son of. He continued to show kindness to the Israelites as his ancestors had done. He allowed Ezra to return to Jerusalem to teach people about God and paid for his journey to get there. He also supplied Nehemiah with money and supplies to rebuild the wall around Jerusalem. And this is Artaxerxes' tomb, carved in the solid rock. I think it's ironic it's in the shape of a cross. Artaxerxes with Ezra and Nehemiah. Conquest. After years of weak rulers following the death of Artaxerxes, people began to grow discontented with the rulers of Persia. High taxes, loss of land from war, etc. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great, king of Macedonia, would invade Persia. And in 4 years, despite having fewer soldiers and only being around 20 years old, Alexander succeeds in conquering all of Persia and the surrounding lands. He destroyed much of the empire, including Persepolis, but he is responsible for blending Greek and Persian ideas and culture together. After Alexander's untimely death in his early 30s, his empire would be divided into 4 parts, each given to one of his 4 main generals. There's a mosaic of Alexander the Great. And this is the empire of Alexander before he died that he managed to accomplish in a few short years. However, because of his death, he was unable to hold on to it, really unable to enjoy the splendors of what he got. The rise of the Parthians. After 100 years, the Parni from Central Asia took over Parthia, the northeastern part of Persia, and they defeated the Seleucid king for control of Persia. In 171 BC, conquered the eastern half of what used to be the Persian Empire, but they ruled for about 400 years and utilized trading with the Greeks and the Chinese via the Silk Road to grow and prosper. However, they lacked a strong central government were eventually conquered by the Sassanids in the early 200s AD. The Sassanids are going to be the last of the major empires of Persia, and they're going to rule from 224 to 651 AD. Their first ruler was Ardashir, who defeated the Parthians for control of Persia. They made several changes: strong central government, made Zoroastrianism the main religion, implemented social classes, a stricter social class with priests and nobles at the top. They also traded on the Silk Road extensively, but after numerous defeats from the Byzantines, the Romans, and Arab invaders, Persia ceased to exist as its own organized nation. All right, here we go. Your review mini quiz. Who is the first king of the Persian Empire? What were the 3 outcomes of the 3 major battles that was fought during the Greek and Persian Wars? Who is the king from Macedonia that conquered the Persians? And who had the last 2 empires to rule in Persia? So go ahead and answer that. Be ready to answer those questions on Google Classroom as well for your grade, and I look forward to discussing it with you very soon.